Good evening. This is Beaty-Coffey of the Ministry of Uncovered No More. It's a crisp, cool to cold night, so I have a blanket on it outside on my front porch. I'm going to read a poem tonight that I've actually been talking about. I had read the poem, let's see, this is Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Afternoon in February. I didn't date when I read it, but I read the next one by December 15th, so this was probably in November, and it's just kind of been sitting in my heart. And now I'm actually going to read it and do some artwork, throw some runes. Actually, I think I will throw spirit animal wisdom for some wisdom tarot, because there was a time years ago when I was a fervent Christian, before I lost my entire Christian existence, and now I'm doing different things to recreate it, because I'm going to be 50 years in the Lord in a world that no longer exists for me. In June of 2023. And so I'm preparing to recreate. I don't even think it's recreate. It is a little bit, but it's mostly create a couple of things. My new hashtag is basically about being the new white. And the new white doesn't see skin color for real. That means we require ourselves as a post-Christian, atheist sometimes, agnostic sometimes person, I require myself to accept everyone as they are. You know, they have the hymn in the Christian world, just as I am without one plea. That is bullshit. Bullshit if you're sitting in a pew, because y'all aren't accepting people. You're still in your navel-gazing little bitty church groups. And I've said I will go back, and I honestly think there's someone very important to me arguing with me, because it doesn't do me personally any good to go back into your midst. It literally doesn't. But I couldn't do anything but go ahead and become a member of a larger church structure, but it's in Austin. The biggest one is in California, and Redding, California actually had huge fires, and that's part of my testimony is fires, frozenness. The most recent one was actually told about as it was happening or right before it happened, on Twitter with some friends of mine on Twitter. But the most obvious one was when I was married over 33 years ago, a little over 33 years ago, in Colleyville, Texas. I was born in a Baylor hospital in the Dallas area, 1966. 45-minute birth I got. I was privileged with one child, 45-minute birth, but it ended up in my house. It happened so fast. My mom evidently had pre-labor, went into the hospital. I was the second child, and I was not very hard to deliver. I don't think my brother was that hard either, but being the first is always a little tricky for women. So anyway, we went back there to do a death vow, which we should have never done, and I am blessed to see my children not do death vows. And the whole woman obeying the man is anathema to me at this point. But I was a fervent Christian, so I didn't argue with anything. If I'd have argued with anything, I wouldn't have been able to have my 10 children. So they're worth it, and more. That's an understatement. So I need to create, because Christianity, being a Christian, isn't anymore. And yet, there's a mystery about the rest of my life that I'm privileged to say is creation. Again, but only with the goodness, not with what I just talked about. What I just talked about was bondage, old wineskins, stuff like that. And so something that I said back in the day when I was still, I think, wearing head coverings, we were more Mennonite than anything else. And the education for my children was good, but again, we were all in chains of religion, and you didn't have the option of disagreeing. I'm at the point where I don't want to hear a lot of disagreement. I'm a universalist. So there's a lot of things I won't be talking about anymore, discussing. They're not open for discussion because it's useless. It's just useless. And I remember sitting in a van with Curtis and his brother, and my brother had been gone for years, quite a few years at that point. I have experienced death all the way around at this point, except for my own. And I've already prepared my sons to carry that burden. I don't want to go into it here, but I've prepared my sons to carry that burden because people will probably react negatively to what I am commissioning to happen. Anyway, I sat there with those two brothers, and I had experienced my brother dying twice. And this is before I got him back in another body form that can shapeshift. Okay, that's Hebrews 11. This is well before that point. That happened after 2008 when I began to see the Lord and my brother and other archangels, because my brother's Archangel Michael. One of them, Tribe Judah, Archangel Michael. And so that's a mystery part of my life that I pretty much don't talk about anymore. I have to in this kind of conversation with myself because I've seen the Lord. I'm a Mary Magdalene. And only He knows if there's others like me alive. I can see a black woman on the other side of the world. So I don't know. I really don't, and I don't need to know. I need to understand the here and now, here and now. And I've been grappling with what to do with a almost 50-year Christian life. It's been coming up since I was like 42, 43, 44 years in the Lord. It's like, what am I going to do with this? How do I stop it without stopping it? Because I'd seen Him in a body form, and more than once. And the more times these things happen, the more I'm left to rejoice. See, and that's the thing that really, really gets to me in America is somebody with my testimony, people don't know what to do with it, and they will tend to be negative about him, me, people like me. I have no idea why. He is changing it. Other archangels around me are changing it. That much I know, and I can appreciate, and that's why I'm going to share this, because I sat there in the van, our big white van, 12-passenger van, with two brothers, and they weren't able to listen to me because I turned to them and I said, if you do not take care of this enmity between you, it's going to be worse than me losing my brother. And that remains true, my loves. If you are an enmity, or somebody is an enmity with you and you have to have distance from them on the earth, that's harder to deal with than actually losing a relative or a dear friend to death. Because death is not losing, death is gaining a beautiful history with someone that you were faithful to and they were faithful to you. If they're dear, they're with you always, not just in memory. If you're somebody like me, if you're an atheist, it doesn't work that way. I don't know how you mourn. I'm only an atheist as an individual who goes into Christian buildings sometimes. I do not worship the way you worship. If I am worshiping Great Spirit more than anyone else, because Great Spirit is the one that is unseen primarily at this point in my life. It may be different for you, and I respect that. But the hymn, Just As I Am, Without One Plea, you sing that in the churches, and that is bullshit. Because you're not treating people outside of your stupid little groups the way you expect to be treated because you're a quote-unquote Christian. Now, I am not talking about how you should cut free people who are toxic. To those of you like myself who have been called toxic or mentally this or that, weird, all of that, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really toxic people. I've got some people in my mother's family that are so toxic, it's ridiculous. But if you think I'm not going to show up to be faithful to, like, say, John Paul Jackson of Streams Ministries International, I will be faithful to him. We didn't get to meet and speak face to face for very real reasons that I know, because I was shown what was happening behind the scenes, sent letters to them asking forgiveness for how my family was treating them, could not stop my mother's family from being destructive towards both my mother and my father. Both parents had to keep carrying death that they were going to need to go through. There was no comfort for me because my parents were attacked so much for the calling on our 4 lives, the Clonic Beaty family, that is something that will only take care of itself as I continue to move forward. But I told these 2 brothers, if you do not reconcile this, it's going to be harder for you than just me losing my brother. What I warned them about came true because they didn't reconcile. That's what I want to speak to America. You have choices. And I think it is extremely, extremely wrong in a moral sort of way when you can fix the relationships and you don't. I completely disagree with that abhorrent thing towards the holiness in our lives as beautiful individuals created in the image of God, Mother, Father. The unseen. That is mystery. You can explain your being here with evolution. You can be an atheist. I wish you well. I'm not, except for when I walk into the churches, and that's a temporary explanation for me. So don't misunderstand me. But I had to warn somebody a second time about some things. But this time, they are going to need to make choices about millennials I pushed out of my body. And I was very clear. I will warn you. I see that you're not going to go bitter now, finally, but I will warn you. Because, and how did I warn this person? It wasn't a warning. I went to the future and I painted the most beautiful picture. And I even assured this person that my son, born on my birthday, and I are working fervently for it to happen. But I have seen this before. And I will likely see it again in other people. You have in your midst people like me that are metaphysical yet practical, and we can see in the future and we can give you possibilities, but you have to use your free will. And a lot of times your bitterness can be removed from you, and I'm thankful for that process, and I worked hard to help the person I'm talking about, and they worked hard too for me. So there is an exchange of love. However, I feel it is morally very wrong to sit down and say, I'm done now. When you have beautiful relationships on the other side of that and you still have breath in your body, you should work towards love never fails in my world. And my world happens to be correct, morally correct. Now, that's no negative on anybody, but the fact that I am sitting there able to go into the future and spin it for you and say this can and should happen and I would love for this to happen, and then come back to you and say, I would suggest you write this down or you will forget it, and you will sit there. Because I had a beautiful vision of the present. But that doesn't take care of the future without some pre-planning and some determination in the here and now. And there are many, many thousands, if not millions of people like this, that you have your poets, your prophets, your sorceresses, your sorcerers, and we work for the weaving of goodness in relationship, not only with the earth, the trees, the birds, the plants, but also with the people. And this is where my father was betrayed terribly, because he could always see in the future, and he could see where decisions being made were not the best for peace in relationships in the future. When are you going to listen, America and the Western world, to the true visionary people? We clean the bathrooms, we cook, we make money and pay bills, we do everything under the sun and then some. When are you going to listen to the true, deep, ancient wisdom of goodness and greatness? Afternoon in February. The day is ending, the night is descending, the marsh is frozen, the river dead. Through clouds like ashes, the red sun flashes on village windows, the glimmer red. The snow recommences, the buried fences mark no longer the road or the plain. While through the meadows, like fearful shadows, slowly passes a funeral train. The bell is pealing, and every feeling within me responds to the dismal knell. Shadows are trailing, my heart is bewailing and tolling within like a funeral bell. That's Beaty-Coffey. Tonight, with the privilege of being the friend in a book of Mr. Longfellow, I sincerely wished I could meet him.